Hello everyone. So in this video, I'm going to briefly share with you about how we can conduct literature reviews in the biolinguistics field. In today's tutorial, we'll talk about we'll try to address a few questions that I think are fundamental to the understanding and to conducting literature reviews. The first one is, what is a literature review question? The second one is, what are the types of literature reviews? And the third question is, how can we develop a literature review research question? So I will bold the keyword here, the type, and this is the what. And then the fourth question, what are the stages of in conducting a systematic or scoping literature review? And then how to perform literature search. We talk about Google Scholars, Scopus, and Web of Science. And finally, how to do data analysis, and finally, how to write and research a literature review reports. All right, or even we can say an article. All right, so they will keep us busy for a while. All right, I have prepared a more detailed explanation about what is a literature review. So we see that literature review, it is a comprehensive summary, or more exactly, it is a synthesis. Yeah, it's the synthesis of existing research, and unlike articles, it focuses on analyzing and synthesizing existing studies rather than presenting original findings. So we won't see original finding. We just synthesize existing studies, which is very important. But it's very important to synthesize existing studies because literature review will be the tools for us to review the gaps, to inform our research. So we want to have a look at existing studies, and to see what are the knowledge, what is the knowledge, what are the gaps remaining out there for us to further fill in the gaps. All right. Something else that I need to discuss is that it is not just a summary of literature, but a critical evaluations of existing literature, including revealing the emerging themes, and the gaps, especially the gap. All right, because the gaps will be the foundations, the basis for us to further conduct further studies on the topics. All right. So these are more specific reason why we conduct literature review, especially in biolinguistics. For example, we should want to have an overview of the field's current knowledge, right? Or we want to identify gaps or unresolved issues, or we want to justify the need for our study, yeah? Or even we want to see what is the potential theoretical framework based on previous literature, right? So I have just briefly discussed what is a literature review, okay? And let's move on to talk about the types of literature review, okay? There are several types of literature review: narrative, systematic, or scoping, theoretical, and things like that. I won't go through all of them because of the time constraint, but I want to highlight something called systematic. So traditional non-systematic, systematic versus systematic reviews. All right. Traditional non-systematic review, systematic. Well, anyway, just leave it like that. So the terms already indicate the nature of the review. In traditional reviews, scholars might just gather a few articles in the same themes, all right, without providing the methodology. Okay, we gather a few articles. It can be subjectively selected, by the author, and then without providing info on the methodology. All right. So this is the more traditional, which is less desirable. It involves subjectivities and it can be biased too, because we don't know how the author select the articles. But systematic reviews are different things. This is often very transparent in terms of search terms and databases, as well as selections of eligible study for inclusion in the review. All right. So transparent. People start adopting more systematic approach to doing literature review because it is transparent, and it is systemic. It is replicable. Yeah, replicable. And these are the qualities of rigorous research, right? Transparent and replicable, and rigorous too. All right. So usually we need to have a methodology. Yeah, providing a methodology. Okay, which is transparent and replicable. Right. Something else about systematic is that when we talk about selection of eligible study for inclusion, usually we need to define inclusion and exclusion criteria. What are considered when we screen in or out, include or exclude certain studies? We need to look at the inclusion criteria. So we need to define what are our inclusion criteria and what are the criteria that would exclude certain papers. For example, in a study, if I am only interested in journal articles and not interested in other type of publication, then I will screen out, for example, book chapters, conference. Okay. So if I create a table here, so I'll say inclusion criteria, and I'll say exclusion criteria. Okay. So if I say type of publication here, then if journal article, and then I will exclude other type of article like review, book chapter, conference, proceeding, report, things like that. Okay, and then research design. So this is, it depends. The way you set up the inclusion or exclusion, it depends. If in my study I only look at intervention-based study, then experimental or quasi-experimental, then I would exclude survey-based, thing like that, study. Okay. Something that you can do is language. Sometimes I'm only interested in language, other language, because I can't read other languages. So this is something else too. Sometimes I'm only interested in papers published in a certain period of time. For example, if I am doing a literature review on ChatGPT, I may say from 2022 to now 2025. The reason is ChatGPT will launch in 2022, and I'm not interested in those papers talking about AI before that, so I'm not interested in that. Okay. Something else you want to do is population. For example, in my study, if I'm only interested in teacher, then I would exclude those that explore students. Okay. Or other population. All right. These are very important because you set up the inclusion and exclusion criteria so that when you look for papers, when you screen for eligible studies, you will base on these. All right. So it's very important. Another area is you can study focus. What are you looking for in study? For example, in one of the recent review that I did, I focus on critical thinking. Okay, the impacts of AI on critical thinking, of AI on, or in this case, we're talking teacher. So, on teaching outcome, for example, on teaching or learning outcome. All right, for example, then I would exclude other focus on perception. All right, because we're talking about experimental as well, so or non-learning outcomes. Okay. Let's see, is there any other thing we can add to this? So, yes, no, I think that's pretty much for now, but it depends. This is just an example. It depends on your research questions and the scope of your reviews. You can set up more, uh, you know, criteria. Right. So this is an example. Okay. Now let's move on. So these let's move on to talk about the types of review. So narrative review is often traditional, non-systematic, but now the people use it in a very different way. But the common understanding is that narrative review is non-systematic, often non-systematic, more traditional and less transparent and less reliable, right? Systematic review is rigorous and transparent, as I have just explained. Scoping review, nowadays scoping review is also systematic review, but the purpose is a bit different. The scoping review is focused on mapping mapping the research themes and revealing the research gaps in the existing literature. Okay, so it's it's narrower in terms of the scope. Systematic review is all relevant, using comprehensive search on multiple databases and involve gray literature, gray non-peer review literature. Okay, so systematic review is very comprehensive, and the goal is to select and to search and locate all available evidence. Okay, all possible available evidence to answer a question, using a very comprehensive search, using a comprehensive search on multiple databases, and even include gray literature like reports. Okay, like reports that hasn't been peer reviewed. All right. So scoping review doesn't claim to evaluate all possible studies. It will just aim to map the research themes and review the gap. So it less comprehensive, compared to systematic review. Okay, if you want really good and reliable evidence, you need to do systematic review. Okay, if you just want to have some sort of general knowledge about the themes and the gaps, then scoping review is fine. Okay, so theoretical, critical is less popular. All right, less popular. This focus on theory. This critically evaluates the literature. Now, how can I develop a research question? So you can start with a topic, broad one, like second language acquisition, and then you can narrow down the focus. What specific aspect in this area? For example, in second language acquisition field, we can talk about the role of motivation, for example, and then you can frame the question. The way you frame it, that there's certain framework. This is just one of the example, but you can surely adopt other framework. So this PICO framework is very popular. Talk about the population, the intervention, comparison, and outcome. Okay, another one is SPICE, setting, perspective. All right, but in general, you want to see uh, how something might influence another language learning outcomes. For example, how does intrinsic motivation influence vocabulary acquisition in in adults EFL learners? Okay, so this is the population. Yeah, this is the population. Intrinsic motivation. Okay, so you may frame something like that. You use PICO often if you want to look for intervention study. If you're not looking for intervention study, you may frame the question slightly differently, something like this, and that's all right. Okay, it takes a little bit of practice. Okay, now the research question is the key question that the whole literature review aims to address or to answer. So you need to frame your question very carefully and clearly, but manageable. Something manageable, realistic. We're not trying to capture everything. Okay, so now this is very important. Now, we talk about the stages. Okay, in conducting literature review. When we talk about the stages, the first one is planning. Obviously, we need to have an idea of what we are looking for, and then we frame it as a research question. Okay, and then we need to have. Now you got a research question. You need to think about the inclusion and exclusion criteria, and that I already gave an example in this table. Something like table, inclusion and exclusion criteria. Table 1, for example, something like that. Okay, all right. Now that's it. Now you got a question, you got a inclusion, exclusion criteria. You may think about whether you want to look for all possible literature, or you just want to have a brief, pick at literature in the scope and review. Which one is more suitable? Because the approach, the review type, will determine how much effort you put in searching for literature, and then interpret the findings and making claims. Okay. Now the second stage is to search. Okay. Often we'll search on Scopus and website, but keep in mind that these are not free. You need to have institutional subscription to these databases. Such as Google Scholars is fine, but the problem with Google Scholar is that you can't report how many articles that you found. For example, if you look at I have a search string in Scopus. If you look at that, you see that I can filter. I can see how many documents found. Okay, I can adjust the search string and things like that easily. Okay, but in Google Scholar, if you go to Google Scholar, if you say ChatGPT and critical thinking, for example, and you will see that we don't know how many. It said roughly almost 70,000 results, and we can't control that much. Okay, and also then in Google Scholar, these are not necessarily Scopus index, so the quality of these papers can be some are good and some are not so good. All right, so it increases the complexity of your review compared to searching on Scopus or web website with a very clear number, and we can manipulate the string, thing like that. Okay, so let's get in back. So the third one is to search for literature on Scopus. I have another video that show you how to perform a search on Scopus and then how to export the results. Okay, so how to perform a search on Scopus and export the result, something like that. So please check out the other video for that one. I don't want to keep this video for too long. All right, for screening, one, you have the number of study you want to look at the title and abstract to see if it's relevant to your question, and then you need to apply your inclusion exclusion criteria consistently. Very useful reference software to use is Zotero. It helps you to manage and then references. For example, I'm showing you. Okay, so you are seeing that in my Zotero I have 2,291 items, and it's quite good. You just need to enter the domain link here, and it will retrieve the whole references for you, and you can create different folder, Gen AI, for example, and subfolder, and then you can organize, the references.